I've had a few people ask me about a POB link for the build that I will be playing in 3.29. So I wanted to kind of go over the start of the build, and all the way up until level 90 is going to be in the POB. That's going to be updated as the league carries on. With the announcement, my plans have not changed. There's a slight nerf to KB, 2%. 2% is really not going to make much of a difference at all. It will be felt a little bit early on, but apart from that, there's going to be next to no change once you get the build up and going and get the gear going. It's going to feel like it's the exact same build from last league and even the league before. So let's talk about the skill tree that we'll be using. It's going to be very simple, very easy to follow. There is a small bit of a respec that's going to happen once we get to Power Siphon in Act 7, but you shouldn't have any problem with that to respec. Even if you don't respec at in Act 7, you can do it later on. It's absolutely fine. I will also have a link to, there's a setup for the skills that are used as well, all the way from Act 1 up to level 90 when we get into the mana stacking part of KB. I do have Rolling Magma in here from level 1 to level 28. I know I got a nerf in the patch notes. You can still use it if you want, or you can use any real skill, any spell skill that's going to be more than good enough to get yourself to level 28. There really is no real big deal from what you want to use. I'm probably going to use KB, Kinetic Bolt, or Flame Wall and level with that until 28, then swap over to Firestorm. And then from that, it's kind of the same tree as it was before. I do have in Act 2 the Fire Mastery here because of Rolling Magma. So if you wanted to drop that, you can just drop that and save yourself a few points. And then once we're in towards the end of Act 2, the start of Act 3, we pick up Spiritual Command and Spiritual Aid. The cool thing about those two is one of them gives us any attack and cast speed that for minion affects us. So that affects our casting of Firestorm, our Shield Charge, our Leap Slam, anything along those lines. It feels really nice. And the same thing with Spiritual Aid. Any increase in reductions to minion damage will also affect us. There's quite a bit of decent notes here that end up scaling that part, and we're on that side of the tree anyway, and you might as well pick it up because the value that you do get out of those points is actually quite good. And then going on past Act 4 into Act 5, we're going to be picking up EO. The reason we pick up EO with Firestorm is because we hit so often with it that proccing EO to get the extra damage is really simple, and it actually happens quite a bit. You should pretty much see it be active all the way through the campaign, especially on bosses. It's super nice to get a little bit of extra damage. Then we come over to the witch area, we pick up life, mana, bit of resistance, stun avoidance while casting, all really good notes. The next big thing in Act 5 that we do pick up is going to be MOM. The only reason I would avoid picking up MOM in Act 5 is if you're not comfortable with using it, because you could end up getting cornered and then end up dying because you're taking damage from your mana. So if you have no mana, you won't be able to cast anything, and it's not going to feel nice. So if you are not used to playing with MOM early on in campaign, I would avoid it. So just simply untick it, and you should be more than good enough to go from that. Going on then for Act 7, the Power Siphon swap, it will be totems first off with Power Siphon. I know Ballista Totems got to change. I know the higher Ascendancy note got to change, but it's going to be absolutely fine for leveling until we swap over to KB. So that is also the thing with the early swap to Power Siphon for your Ascendancy notes. You will be picking up the totem notes that are on the tree, simply because they also give us a lot of mana regen, which is really nice. If we can cast them super fast, we just cast them, place them, move on, and go on to the next pack. As you can see, there was a little bit of a swap in the passive tree, as I said, from using Firestorm to Power Siphon. The swap is very small. The only real difference is we're dropping the fire damage and EO from that, because Power Siphon is not a spell, so it's not going to benefit from it. And we spec into the totems, into the wand stuff. That is basically the only swap. That's the only thing that changes from using Firestorm to Power Siphon. Then we use Power Siphon all the way up until Act 10, maybe even past that before we swap into KB. I'd probably keep using it until maybe 70, 75, even 80 you can use it and it still should be fine. Once we start swapping, or once we fully swapped into Power Siphon, we start picking up a bit of the power charge notes at the top, the wand stuff, because we'll be using a wand. It's going to feel very nice to play. It's going to feel really safe because you don't have to really do much of anything. You place your totems, you run around. The next swap that comes is going to be about level 75, level 80-ish for the KB swap. The difference in the KB swap is we're going to be dropping all of the totem stuff, we're going to be dropping all of the minion stuff to go more into wands and mana related stuff. So as you can see, around level 80-ish, we drop pretty much the whole top left side of the tree and put them into a bunch of wand stuff that's really good for us. That's going to help us. With this note, this mastery is actually quite important because we do have a bit of a mana or a bit of an accuracy issue early on until we're able to get our precision up, our intelligence up, until we're able to get all of that. This is actually quite important. This is why we picked this up first. And then to deal with our mana cost and our life so that we do have leech, we pick up a leech note down here for the life and mana. It's super nice early on before we get our real setup for leech. Get an extra projectile from up here. Because we're going to be converting the fizz damage of KB early on, we take the lightning mastery to start converting the fizz to lightning. And then from that, it is really the level 93 is pretty much the exact same as the early one. The only difference is we pick up a couple of the jewels, we pick up a bit more of the mana parts, a bit more of the power charges. And that's really about it for the level 90 tree. This tree will be updated as the league goes on, probably day by day when I get to it. So the POB will be updated. I don't know if I'll be making a video for each and every little update. Probably not. So let's get into the skills from level 1 to level 90, as I said. So as I already mentioned, we are using Rolling Magma early on until 28. Rolling Magma or whatever else you want to use is absolutely fine. Then once we get into the Firestorm swap in Act 3, our links change slightly. So we'll have Firestorm, Arcane Surge, and Combustion as our main damage source. Then we have a bunch of movement skills, Clarity to help us with our mana, Anger to give us a bit more damage, Flammability to help us with bossing. It's the only thing that you would ever use Flammability on. Maybe if you get really unlucky with a tanky rare, you could use it. That's about it. Then for Act 4, once we're able to get level 38 to get some of the better supports and hopefully a 4-link or 2, we will put our main damage, Firestorm, into that 4-link. At level 38, when we get Unleash, it's going to feel really nice to use. It's a lot more damage. There is really no downside to using Unleash because the damage, even the less damage from it, is still going to be a benefit to us. We have automation at that point too for Arcane Cloak early on. Gives us a bunch of damage, it auto-casts, it's super nice. The thing as well at 38 that is kind of important to get, if you're able to, is to get Eternal Blessing on Anger. And the reason this is important is because Eternal Blessing is going to give us basically a free aura that's linked to it, so it doesn't use up the mana, it doesn't reserve it, because Anger will reserve 50%, and with Eternal Blessing it's not going to do that, but you can only have one Eternal Blessing set up at a time, so it won't work if you try to use multiple. And the reason it's important to have that early on, before level 40 I would say, is because then we get the most out of our Arcane Cloak, because it's based on how much mana we have, our current mana. So the more mana we have, the better. And obviously, if we're not using up the reservation for the mana, the more it's used, or the more better it becomes for us. There is no real change from Act 4 onwards. The setup stays the exact same up until about Act 7, Act 8, once we swap over to Power Siphon. Once we swap over to Power Siphon, like I said, it's going to be in the Ballista version. So you're going to hopefully, by that stage, find yourself a 5-link if you're able to. If you're not able to, there's no worry. You can just use a 4-link. If you're still on a 4-link, I would drop the elemental damage with attacks, because like I said, we do have a bit of an accuracy issue early on, so the additional accuracy is actually quite good to have in that. And like I have mentioned before, I know Ballista Totem got a slight nerf throughout the campaign. It's going to be absolutely not a bother at all. And then Precision is going to be used once we swap over. That's going to be set up with our Arrogance. The reason this is set up in our Arrogance is because we have Anger on Eternal Blessing, which means we can't use anything else that reserves our mana. And because Arrogance is going to be linked to, or Precision is going to be linked to Arrogance, it's going to be using our life. And you might think, oh, that's bad, but Precision is not going to use that much life in the first place anyway. And the bonus that you get from it, like I said, the crit and the crit and the accuracy is important early on. So it's definitely worth to do this if you have the links available. If you don't, just skip it until you're able to get the links. But it's only a 2 link, so it shouldn't be that hard to get in the first place. The curse that we swap as well from flammability to LE weakness, because we're going to be doing a mixture of damage. It's not just going to be purely fire. We're going to be doing everything: fire, lightning, cold, and it all depends on the type of gear that you have. So early on, you're just looking for any generic damage. Once you generic spell damage, once you swap over to Power Siphon, you could look for flat damage on wands. Getting flat damage on wands is going to be easy because of the bases that you can get for wands that give you the cannot roll caster mods. So once you cannot roll caster mods, you can roll all the attack damage mods, all the flat damage mods, which is exactly how we scale the damage of our Power Siphon. The items that I will have linked in this POB are the Power Siphon swap for mapping. Now this is more of, if you can get it, you can get it. If you can't, I wouldn't worry about it. But all of these uniques that are here are usually pretty cheap early on and give us an incredible amount of damage. Because we are stacking power charges early on, the Malachi's Loop, once you're able to get it, the two max power charges is so nice. The amount of damage it gives you is ridiculous. The Piscator's weapon, like I talked about before in a previous video, this weapon can carry you all the way up until red maps. It did last league for me. It's going to do the exact same thing for me this league once I get it. It is extremely underrated for one builds. A lot of people should be using it. The Audrey's Tenure, it can be used. It's only really used for the 100% increased spell damage. If you wanted to go with any other gloves that you might want, like if you need resistances, feel free to swap them out. It's not that important. The amulet is really, really nice because it gives us flat damage per power charge, and because we're already scaling into the power charges and we have our Malachi's Loop, it's an incredible amount of damage, plus the 20 all res. It's actually quite a lot. Mana regen is also nice. In terms of the rares, it's going to be just generic life, mana, resistances, whatever you need on them. Stygian Vise, obviously don't worry about that until you get one. Use any generic belt again with the attributes or the resistances that you need. The chest piece, similar again, any resistances that you need to fill out the missing stats that you need. In terms of flasks, these are kind of what I'm going to be using early on. Quicksilver, Jade, Quartz. Quartz is super nice. Move through everything, don't have to get stuck in packs, which can be very annoying early on. Life and mana flask as well until then. For the jewels, we have 2 jewel slots early on. Again, they're going to be very generic stuff like life percent, mana percent. You can get attack speed, if you can get crit, spell damage, anything along those lines is going to be more than good enough. But if you do not have anything that you want to put into the jewel sockets, you can just untick them for now and just save yourself 2 points until you have something that's actually worth putting in there. Our links change slightly once we swap over to the Kboc swap, which we do, like I said, around level 75, level 80, anywhere in that range you can swap over to it. And now, so Kinetic Blast clustering is going to be used for our clear. The reason I say to swap for this around level 70 is because, or level 70 or level 80, is because you want to wait for it to actually appear on the market. Unless you want to sit there and run lab until you get it, go ahead. I wouldn't recommend it. There's so much better things you can do with your time instead of trying to get one of these. If you get it in one of the early labs, it's great. Then you save yourself a lot of time of waiting for it to be listed up on the market. The links for the 4-link for KB are going to be obviously Kinetic Blast, Sacred Wisps, Fork, and Returning Proj. Those are the best links for it early on for the clear, because it's not going to be used for our single target damage until we fully swap into it. For our single target damage, there is a few things we can use. I know KF Kinetic Fuselage is going to be is nerfed for the common patch, but it's still going to be absolutely fine for the single target if we wanted to use it. Power Siphon is still more than good enough as a self-cast version. Either or one of them is more than good enough to use it. Now, if you really wanted to use KB for the single target, you can. It's just going to be a bit slower than the other two that I mentioned. So that is kind of up to you what you want to do. And because we'll be using Malachi's Loop, we'll be swapping over to Seal Charge, faster attacks momentum, just so we can get across maps and make the whole process a lot faster. We're going to have a automation steel skin just to help us early on with a little bit of tankiness. Mark on hit, sniper's mark again, just for the KB to help us with the clear and the extra proj. It's really, really good setup. The setup for mark on hit, sniper's mark doesn't change once we're able to get it. Purity of Elements early on is not only just used for the extra resistance that you get, it's used for being immune to ailments, which early on is quite hard to get. So getting it from Pure Developments is 100% the best way to go about it early on. Later on we swap out of it because we can get ailment immunity through other ways. Like I mentioned, precision is going to be really needed to help us finish up our accuracy. As you can see, we're slightly low on the accuracy, but even then between like 95% is going to be more than good enough to get our mapping going, get what we need done. Sigil power, again, can kind of be kept. It's kind of just for a single target, really, because of the extra lightning damage that it gives per stage, which is flat lightning damage, which is going to affect our single target, which is super nice. If you don't want to press the extra button, you can get rid of it, of course. That's kind of up to yourself if you want to do that. Frostblank again, just to help us go around the maps and whatever else faster. That is pretty much the setup for the Kboc swap. There is nothing else really that's needed for the skills. In terms of the items are going to be the exact same from the Power Siphon into the KB early on. The exact same uniques, the exact same jewels, rare gear, everything is going to be the exact same. In the config tab, you're going to see I have a couple of custom modifiers set up. The only reason they're set up is to get the full scale of the returning proj and for the Sacred Wisps, because P1 Ninja does not calculate them properly. And I also have the Farrell's Bloodline put in for the extra attack speed and the extra crit. A small bit of shock because we do shock. That's about it, really. The Anoint that we want to get when we can get it is going to be Split Shot. It's the best Anoint for this build, without a question. Early on, it's the best anyway. Later on, we don't need it because we can get it in other ways. But I'd say depending on the availability of oils early on, either look for them if they're there they're cheap enough to buy, get them. If they're not, there is no need to worry about this at all. It's only really used for the single target setup. And then in terms of, and the only other thing that I can think of that is important once you swap over to KB is your Spellslinger Tornado setup that I talked about in the previous video. This is kind of a must for mapping and single target if you wanted to use KB. Tornado gives us so much overlaps when the projectile from KB hits that it's kind of mandatory for the build and for the skill to feel good. So this setup for Spellslinger Tornado, once we get it, is never replaced. It is too good to drop. I think that's about it. I think that's all I wanted to talk to you about today. This POB will be linked down below. If anybody has any questions for it, yeah, just let me know.